What's up, Goon Squad? Welcome to the Week 9 preview edition of the Football Goons podcast. We're thrilled that you have taken the time to check out the show live on YouTube or via the podcast option some point after we air live. Regardless of when or how you're listening, we're just glad that you are on board with us this week. There's a ton to discuss this week, and we're going to get into all of it, including the absolute madhouse trade deadline day that we had today. Probably the craziest trade deadline day in the history of the NFL, at least that I can remember in however old years I am, 30 something at this point. I don't even remember anymore. But before we get into that, we've got to discuss something right out of the gate here. Tonight is Halloween night. So I need to know, when you were a kid or even now with your kids trick-or-treating, just one choice here. What is the best candy that you can receive trick-or-treating, and what is the worst candy you can get?
Man, the bet.
I can go while you're thinking. Mine's done already. I've already eaten two of my.
All right, go.
I've eaten two of his Kit Kats already.
Oh, nice.
I love weird? Is it weird so much?
Is it weird that I like bite-sized Snickers so much, and I can't even stomach a full-size Snickers bar? Is it weird? Is it just the ratios are different? I don't understand.
It's weird that you like Snickers in general.
Oh, stop it! Stop it!
They're okay.
You're being ridiculous now.
But they are absolutely
one candy in the world.
They are absolutely no Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, which is by far the number one best candy you could get.
I just almost feel like choosing the peanut butter cup is like rooting for the Yankees. Like everybody likes the peanut butter cup. Like if you don't like a peanut butter cup, you're allergic to peanuts. That's it. That's a list of people who don't like a peanut butter cup is you'll die if you eat this. That's the end of that list.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, it's so good that it's hard to I don't know. You're getting the best candy you can for free.
Right. I'm a little weird with the peanut. I'm not crazy about peanut butter. So, if I'm in the mood for it, obviously there's nothing better. But I'll eat a Kit Kat right here, right now, every day.
Man, that's a good idea. I'm going to eat this Reese's right now.
Sometimes you say things, Miles, that make me want to mute you. Like, how do you not like peanut butter? By the way, to go with the worst, besides bags of pennies, because that's the worst thing to get on Halloween, because whoever does that should not be allowed to be giving out stuff on Halloween. But Whoppers. I think they're the most disgusting thing on the planet.
Oh, come on, man.
The Whopper. I'm in on the Whopper.
Whoppers are disgusting.
Smarties are the worst for me. I can't eat a Smartie.
Yeah, it's true. That's like chalk.
Listen, first of all, don't tell Chloe that I'm eating her candy on her, okay? And then,
because she'll whoop on you.
She will. She'll beat me. And then, secondly, if you're handing out candy and you give out popcorn balls, you should just turn your light off. I don't understand. When I went to trick-or-treating as a kid, if somebody handed me a popcorn ball, I would just turn around and leave. I didn't even take it.
No, thank you.
Popcorn ball.
So what's worse, popcorn balls or little bags of pennies?
I've never heard of the little bags of pennies thing. That must be a
Long
Island.
A Long Island, New York thing. I don't know. Yeah, always little bags of pennies.
Listen, we had one guy in our neighborhood growing up. He would give out little tied off sandwich baggies, but there was $3 a quarters in that thing.
That's a good deal.
As we got older, we would try and work our costumes to be the first costume is something we can transition out of easily. The second costume had to make it obvious that we weren't coming back to get another $3.
Yeah.
Double dipping.
All right. So now that I've eaten my daughter's candy for the second time today, let's get into our discussion this week. Lots going on. We're going to start with our next man up segment here. Talk about some of the names who are being added at a high rate this week so far off of the waiver wire. Let's get right into it here. First name on the list is Paul Richardson, wide receiver of the Seahawks. Caught 6 passes, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns last week. He's on pace this season for double-digit touchdowns, and he's proven to be a major deep threat in a passing offense that's really coming alive in Seattle. So are we interested in Paul Richardson on rosters?
Yeah, I am. I think you kind of nailed it there. The passing game is really coming on. I mean, big time. It's actually been kind of cool from a distance to view this Seattle offense and how it's grown with Russell Wilson. I mean, when early on, yeah, he was doing a great job and they won a Super Bowl, so obviously he's doing something right. But that was a Marshawn Lynch team that Russ Wilson was taking care of. And like Doug Baldwin would make 2-3 plays a game that kept you sort of honest in the pass game. And now, last year and 2 years ago, we sort of saw it become big time Wilson to Baldwin. And, Lynch was sort of the afterthought. And now they can't run to save their lives at this point. I mean, I may be off on this, but I believe I heard they had 3 carries on Sunday. Like they called 3 run plays.
Yeah.
Now the game script helped with that. You had to keep up with Watson, but like they're a full pass offense now. And on top of that, Baldwin's become that stud that teams are scheming to take away. So all this long story short, I love Paul Richardson. Listen, don't expect him to have that stat line every week, but he's everything that people draft Deshaun Jackson to be.
Yep.
I mean, he can go get you 2 catches for 70 yards, and he'll score every other week. So, I mean, especially, we keep hitting on bye weeks. These next couple weeks, players like Paul Richardson keep you alive.
6 teams on bye this week.
Yeah, that's brutal. You're talking about basically 18 fantasy wide receivers aren't playing this week. Not to mention your Odell Beckhams and players like that. So,
yeah, the biggest thing for me there is the double-digit touchdowns. He's on pace for double-digit touchdowns. So how many receivers are going to do that this year? And it's not a lock that he's going to, obviously, but the numbers don't lie. I mean, he's trending in that direction. So I want to get on that train while I can.
Right.
I think the biggest thing is that the Seahawks have changed their philosophy of what they are. Kudos to them for adjusting to what they have. You know what I mean? Yeah. But even more so, it's making one option a fantasy target, but their number 2 option, which Richardson has fallen into tight end option. Graham finally got in the end zone last week. Their passing game as a whole is a realistic fantasy option, 1 through 4 right there.
All right, let's talk about Alex Collins, running back, Baltimore Ravens. Ravens have been looking for a back, it seems like, for years now. And we've been talking about it weekly, it seems like, for years now. Collins is now the clear lead back in Baltimore for the foreseeable future. Some rumblings out of Baltimore today that everybody's favorite, Danny Woodhead, was back as a participant in practice. Not quite eligible to come off of IR yet, but worth looking at. So Collins averaging 6 yards per carry. Is this the kind of guy who could become that lead back and be worthy of a look on your fantasy team?
Worthy of a look, yes. I mean, obviously, right now in the thick of bye season, like Miles just said, it's obviously worth a look. I just don't want you to get too skewed by games he's having. Like, okay, for example, last week he had a great game against Miami. That team is falling apart at the seams. They're trading away their number 1 running back, their number 1 wide receiver, and probably their most talented player is on the trade block. There were talks about cutting Ndamukong Suh outright. Like, that team has no idea where they're going. So let's not look at one really good game against a really, really right now and say that, like, that's what we're going to get from Alex Collins every week. The Ravens are still very predictable. Joe Flacco is still not elite, just in case anybody was wondering.
Wait.
I'm not going to get on the Alex Collins train just because of a couple of good games.
I saw a shirt that said Flacco is elite.
Yeah,
you're telling me that's not true?
You should burn that.
I don't have a ton of interest in Collins. I think he's a good player. I think it's a situation I don't trust. Maybe it's the curse of the elevator with the Ravens running back situation.
Oh, my God.
I don't know if I can say that.
You did.
It's too late.
Maybe we'll edit that out. Maybe we'll edit that out. But, it's like, hey, Terrence West is real good. He's gone. Buck Allen's real good. He's gone. Now it's Alex Collins. And I hate the guy, but you're right, South. They're going to get Danny Woodhead the ball because of reasons. So,
You don't know why you hate him. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, but we don't have time for this. All I'll say is I would love to grab him with the understanding that he's getting you through the next 2 or so weeks. And then I think they're full RBBC. So, take it for what it's worth at this point.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a really productive bye-week fill-in kind of guy. I have a team where I've got Melvin Gordon and Jordan Howard on a bye this week. At that
you love Alex Collins there.
At that point, why not Alex Collins? So, he's a perfect fill-in kind of guy, but don't expect it to last long-term.
Yeah.
Just don't. Woodhead fits more what they want to do with that little junk check-down style offense that Marty Morningwig loves to run. So let's talk about Corey Davis, wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans. He's back from an injury this week, expected to be a full go. And this is a team that really needs a player on the outside to eat up some targets for them. The running game is extremely efficient, but they really haven't had anybody step up in their passing attack for them. In his only start this year before getting banged up, he had 10 targets in that game. Seemed like he was kind of a go-to guy on the outside. So does Corey Davis have any fantasy appeal?
Yeah, he has to. I mean, we've had this talk, and I don't say that frustratedly. I feel the same as I did weeks ago, where you're right. Rashard Matthews is playing okay. I don't have any problem with the way he's playing. Decker is very average at this point in his career, and they haven't had the same connection with Delaney Walker even. So the passing game has struggled, and the Titans have struggled as a result. They haven't looked nearly like the team we expected them to be on offense. Even the run game, which you said is efficient, last year was dominant. So efficient is a very big step backwards for them. So I almost feel like, listen, you took this guy number 5. That's the same talk we had 2 months ago. He was the 5th pick in the draft. He is not a bust because of talent. He had a hammy. That happens. So now that he's back, I love Corey Davis. I was thrilled to death Monday afternoon. I actually was just looking for my waiver stuff, and he was still a free agent because of their bye week. So I went ahead and made that move without having to worry about my waiver claim. So I think Corey Davis is a must-add at this point, especially the state of receiver this year. Seems worse than it's been. I love Corey Davis right now.
Yeah, I'm not out on Corey Davis. That team, if you just look at how they're built right now, when they run for 100 yards, they win, and when they don't, they lose. I think they're starting to understand that their bread and butter is running the football to set up the pass. So I like them going forward to give the ball more to Murray and Henry and let that be the reason why they're winning football games, which scares me because, yes, they need a target monster on the outside, but if Mariota is going to start throwing 20 times a game and not 35 to 40 times a game, that's going to be a huge difference for me. You know what I mean? So I like Corey Davis a lot. I think he is the most talented wide receiver in that offense. And anytime you get a chance to pick up a number 1 receiver in week 9 when everybody's in the middle of their buys, that's a good deal. I'm just weary that, they're going to start really leaning heavy on the run because that is what's won them their 4 games.
The cream is going to rise to the top here in this situation, and I really agree with what Miles said. There's just too much talent here. I mean, it's not a coincidence that they thought so highly of him to draft him where they did. So he's going to be productive. He's going to be targeted. They believe in him. The talent is there. So as long as he stays healthy, I'm extremely interested as well.
Yeah, all due respect to all the other fantasy relevant players on that team, he's the best player in a Titans uniform other than Marcus Mariota.
Right.
So, I mean, run the ball to win. I hear you, but you have to get him involved as well and heavily involved.
All right, let's talk about another wide receiver here, Sterling Shepard of the New York Giants. Surprisingly low owned percentage at this point. I think, with that injury and with the way the Giants were playing, people kind of jumped off the Sterling Shepard train there. You should see a ton of targets coming back, though, in an offense with no real receiver threat. And one that kind of got a little more established in the running game before their bye. So how do we feel about Sterling Shepard moving forward?
I don't know. he feels like he's going to be just a guy this year. I think last year, but everybody's a different player without Odell Beckham getting all the attention. So I think he's probably a must own at this point, just in case. But I just don't know what the Giants can do offensively at this point. And if so, I like Evan Ingram more as a target monster at this point. So contradictory to the way I felt a few weeks ago, but I won't have it.
I've reversed myself 100% on this too. That they're just not. They have no idea what they are at this point. They're not very good along the offensive line. I know they're making some adjustments and trying to change things up. I know they're trying to get Darko more involved, but they're just not very good on offense right now and extremely predictable without Odell Beckham, even more so than when he's in the lineup. Because when he's in the lineup, you know he's getting the ball, but you can't stop him.
No, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Now they're extremely predictable because you took away the best player on their team. Like I'm out on this. I think this team is going to start playing for next year if they haven't already, and that's just going to be that.
I think this is a good ad because we're going back to what we've kind of been threading through this the whole way. It's buy time at this point. So if the matchup is right for Sterling Shepard, considering the amount of targets that he's likely to get, we know how Eli is when he establishes the best guy on his offense with getting him the ball. And I do agree that's most likely going to be Ingram, but there's only so much space that you really have in that middle of the field when you're not running the ball very well. So you're going to have to rely on the outside passing game a little bit more. And I just think the volume is going to be there for Shepard. So based on what his matchup is going to be, I think that he's a good add and a potential, kind of stream option for you coming off your bench through these bye weeks. That's just a personal opinion on it. I did pick him up in a league, and I am going to kind of stash him away and see what he does over these next few weeks. All right, this one's a kind of a throw out there for Rocco. Let's talk about Robbie Anderson of the New York Jets, wide receiver. The production really hasn't slowed down very much, and he just kind of keeps churning out some good games here. And I don't know that it's necessarily a season-long team kind of approach here, maybe more so in a weekly, but he has 59 yards and or a touchdown in 5 straight games for the Jets. So the production, he's kind of been their guy. He keeps churning it out. How do we feel about Robbie Anderson?
I like him. Obviously, he's a New York Jet. As much as I bash on him, they're still my team. No, I think the thing with Anderson is there are games where they try and get him to be like a true number one receiver. And I don't know if he'll ever be that, but in those games, they try and get him the 7 targets, the 8 targets, and he winds up with 5 or 6 catches for 75 yards and a score. But even in the games where you don't get that, you get the Deshaun Jackson plays because he's lightning fast. So you get 1 catch for 75 yards and a score when he's not giving you, 5 for 85. You know what I mean? So I like Anderson, especially right now. I roster him in a couple of leagues. He's not one of my starting 3 wide receivers, but he is going to get some major play time over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think I like him a lot more in a like a FanDuel or DraftKings setting because the price is just about always right on him, and he's likely to hit for one of those bigger plays on a Sunday. So I think that you kind of get a bigger return for your investment there. I'm not sure that I'd put him on a roster in a season-long league just because there's too much depth there. But I do like him for your weekly games. All right, let's talk about one more specific situation here, and that is surrounding the Ezekiel Elliott suspension. It turned out last night that he lost his appeal to get a permanent stay on the suspension. So the 6 games were reinstated effective immediately. The NFLPA did put in for a temporary stay, and I'm hearing that tonight that was already denied at this point. So it seems like that judge has basically said to that team, the legal team there, that, look, this is going to happen.
Yeah, we're done here.
We're done here. Like, just let it happen at this point. So as of right now, Ezekiel Elliott is going to miss the next 6 weeks of the season, won't be eligible to play again until December 17th against the Raiders. Alfred Morris, Darren McFadden. Out of these two backs, is there a guy that you believe is going to be a better pickup and be more productive during these next 6 weeks?
I think Morris, to be honest. If you look at it right now, McFadden plays a little bit more than Morris does. I think that's because of the way they're using them. McFadden has kind of been like their change of pace back, where Morris is strictly Zeke's backup. And I think they're going to trust Morris to do more of the Zeke things. Nobody can do them like Zeke. Please let me say that now before someone strikes me down or whatever. But I think they're looking for Morris to be more of the Zeke role, while McFadden maybe gets a little bit more attempts, but in still his same role that he's been in to this point. So I like Morris going forward as their primary back, and still bringing in McFadden as like a change of pace type of guy.
Yeah, it's definitely Morris for me. So you've heard that like maybe Morris is going to stay in the same role he's been in, and McFadden's going to sort of take over Zeke's role. But McFadden isn't playing this year. He's been inactive.
Right.
Like maybe I'm missing something here, but I know a large part of that's because he doesn't play any special teams, and Rod Smith will. But you're not going to take a guy from inactive and hand over the lead of the backfield of a team that we all might be rolling our eyes that Zeke's gone, they're probably buried. They're 4-3. They're very much still in the hunt. They have an absolute beast of a quarterback, still have a great line. Like, they're not throwing in the towel. So why would you take a guy who's been inactive and make him your lead back? This is Morris without a doubt for me.
I find it interesting too. Like Jerry Jones, he's never been known to not just kind of blurt something out there. He's not the coach of this team. He's not game planning. He's no longer even playing the role of GM. He's the owner of the Cowboys, and kind of came out today and indicated that it was going to be like a 60-40 in favor of Alfred Morris.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think about what you said, where, McFadden really hasn't even been active at this point. So you as the owner are committing to a 40% timeshare for a guy who hasn't really seen the field.
Right.
What must your coach be doing in the locker room, in the facility?
It's his Arkansas boy. He's throwing him a bone.
Yeah, I'm all Alfred Morris on this one. I think that he's probably the closer back to what Zeke would bring you as far as
definitely,
just aggressive, having the patience for those holes to open up and then just hitting it full force. And McFadden's just a plotter. If you need a guy late in the game to just kind of come in and bang on some guys and beat them down and wear them out, then you might see him a little bit then. But I think it's all Alfred Morris.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about some of the bigger stories around the league. And we're going to kind of revamp this section from where we were heading based on some of today's trade activity. Let's start off with Jimmy Garoppolo, formerly of the Patriots, now the San Francisco 49ers. Traded to the Niners yesterday for what we believe was a 6th-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Does he have any fantasy appeal at any point this season? And beyond that question for fantasy, is he their guy moving forward, or is this just kind of a tryout?
Well, Jimmy was moved for a 2nd-round pick, not a 6th.
Second, I'm confused. Sorry,
you got the wrong guy there, but. For me, honestly, fantasy-wise, I'm super interested in him next year. But the trade came a little bit too late for me this year, because by the time I think he's fully ready to go with the offense, the whole system, timing with the receivers, yada, 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 my quarterback's back. I don't have bye week issues. I don't have any of that. So the guy I've been rolling with is back. Now, if the guy you've been rolling with is terrible, then maybe you want Jimmy Garoppolo. But if you've even had an average situation to this point, I would have a little trouble handing over the reins of it to a guy who's just today meeting his receivers, let alone getting timing down. And it's not I'm laugh about Brian Hoyer, but when Brian Hoyer switches teams and has to meet his players, yada yada, he at least has a lot of NFL speed experience. Garoppolo has, 2 starts under his belt. So for me, I'm not so sure. But next year, I'm not going to be surprised if he's close to a top 10 pre-rank for me.
Wow. Rock?
I don't like to talk about any Patriot players.
He's not a Patriot. He's a Niner.
I know. But he'll always be a Patriot. I'm with Miles. Like, listen, I think he can make a difference for that team later on in this season, even. But at that point, it's too late for it to matter for your fantasy team. Right. So from a fantasy standpoint, he's not relevant right now. I mean, I still think if he starts this week, he's a better option than anything they rolled out with last week. So. But it's just going to take too long to get to be fantasy relevant. I don't know if I'll go as far as putting them top 10 next year, but I think this is a brilliant move. I don't think this is just for now. This is for the future. This is Kyle Shanahan assuring that he gets his guy. I know all the talk was out there about wanting Kirk Cousins. That's not a guarantee. I know all the talk is out there about the draft. There were supposed to be 3 guys. The Niners were almost assured a top spot. It looks like they're still going to have a top spot, but now maybe we don't have 3 guys. Maybe we have 2 guys. Maybe we have 1 guy. None of them are, standing out at this point of that college crop that we thought was going to happen. So I think what happened with the Niners situation is everything that looked like everything was 100% slam dunk. It was either going to be Kirk Cousins or one of these quarterbacks coming out, and now everything is. This was a guarantee for Kyle Shanahan. So you don't make this trade and give up a second-round pick next year if you're not going forward with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, so you brought up Kirk Cousins. All the scuttlebutt pretty much from the offseason through now was that he was the guy that San Francisco really wanted. And who knows if that's like a media creation, kind of like a fan perspective, just sitting back and looking and saying, hey, there's a former relationship there. It'll work. But clearly at this point, that's not going to happen. So, kind of tying this together here, how do you feel about Kirk Cousins next year? Where do you guys see him kind of landing at this point?
Where I hope he lands.
It's not that unrealistic.
No, it's not.
No, it's not at all. 2 years ago, I would have been out on this because I was a Kirk Cousins hater for whatever reason. I think it was a name thing or a college thing or a pedigree thing. And I ate my words last year after watching him go for 4,000 again, and just, keeping Washington in the playoff race and relevant. But yeah, now I'm all on board. I hope he winds up in the New York Jets, and I think they're probably the inside track at this point. They cleared up all that cap space this year. They're more coming off the books next year. They're going to be in the best shape. And the Jets were one of those teams where they were hoping to land one of these top quarterback prospects. But like I said, in talking about Garoppolo and the 49ers, who knows what that looks like now. So, yeah, I hope he's a New York Jet next year.
I guess as your friend, I hope that as well. I don't see it. I don't see the inside track thing. And the reason for that is I think Kirk Cousins is probably in a really unique situation where it's entirely possible that he's going to be like the greatest free agent ever in terms of like how many teams are going to knock on his door. He's going to get to totally pick this situation. And like it's like Drew Brees if Drew Brees hadn't torn up his shoulder. You know what I mean? Like it was clear the team didn't want him. And I'm not so sure the Skins don't want him now, but I still feel like the bridge is just burnt. For their sake, I hope not, because he's good there. But if I'm Kirk Cousins of all these QB needy teams, I'm going to Jacksonville. There's no state tax, first off, and don't tell me that doesn't matter. These free agents flock to Florida, they flock to Texas because they're state tax 1% on a $120 million salary.
Sign me up.
That's not $20. You know what I mean? Like that's a big difference in money. On top of that, you've got Leonard Fournette in the backfield. You're throwing the ball to Allen Robinson. Let's not forget he's a thing. And then obviously Hearns and Lee as well. You've got a lot of weapons. You've got a defense that if you can put up 20 points, you're going 13-3. So I just feel like Jacksonville's a great situation for him. I think the question is sort of joking, sort of not. He may need to ask himself if he's willing to live in London in a few years because that could happen. But I think it's cool. And on top of that, like this whole quarterback situation, Rock, you had mentioned about the draft, and everybody's going crazy about Sam and Luke Falk and Josh Rosen and Josh Allen, and we all think this is going to be some huge QB crop. I think the acts of yesterday and today show us this might be slot in the draft at quarterback next year, because not only were the Niners willing to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, which I like for a different reason, where if I have time I'll get into, but from all accounts here, the Browns had A.J. McCarron, and they forgot to call the league office in like the most Browns-like thing ever, where it's like, okay, do we want Carson Wentz? No, I want my picks. Do we want Deshaun Watson? No, I need more picks. A.J. McCarron, here's some extra picks, and we're so excited about it, we're going to celebrate instead of calling the league office.
Oh, it's brutal.
But anyways, if you're telling me you're Cleveland, like A.J. McCarron, they're obviously not going to playoffs this year. So what that's telling me is they think A.J. McCarron is better than what they can pick in the draft next year. So at least to an extent, maybe not apples to apples, but I kind of think that as fans, we may be seriously overrating what this quarterback crop looks like in this draft. Because if you're following this stuff, Sam Darnold's not having a very good year. Josh Allen looks like he's forever away. So all these guys have major question marks, and I think we're seeing it in this trade market.
Well, I think what happened was we've been told that this was supposed to be the class, and I think everybody bought into that.
Right, right.
And now what happens is we're seeing the product on the field. Matt Barkley was going to be the number one pick in the draft, and then he went back to school, and he was the first pick of the draft in the 4th round.
Yeah,
so that can happen. So, right. Yes, what we're seeing is, all right, this guy's not living up to the potential we thought he had. Darno has arm mechanic issues and, whatever the case may be. And now people are like, okay, so now what's realistically our best option? Trading our second rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo, trading for A.J. McCarron, going after Kirk Cousins full steam. These guys, we know, at least we know what they are. We have no idea what this college class is going to bring us. So that's why we're seeing all this movement. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of movement today, more so than years past at the trade deadline, is because people are going after what they know to be true instead of the what ifs.
Yeah. Right. And I think that, an interesting point to be made here is that the 49ers did not make this trade and give up a second rounder and bring in Jimmy to kind of let him walk in the offseason.
Yeah.
They're going to have to back up the truck
yeah,
and pay this guy for essentially like 6 productive quarters of football.
Right.
So, that's just the market that we're in, the chance that you're going to have to take based on what you've seen on tape of him, the homework that you might have done previously on this player as well. So he's going to get paid. Cousins, we know he's going to get paid somewhere. Now, with one less suitor, maybe it allows some other teams to sneak in and be able to afford him a little bit, because we know like the 49ers were going to have a ton of cap space. The Jets have a ton of cap space. There's a couple other teams, but like you said, a team like Jacksonville now who has decided, hey, Blake Bortles is not our guy. A team maybe like Miami who has issues now with Tannehill with injuries, maybe not sold on him to begin with. Cutler, like you should put him on the first plane out of there. In a kind of an appealing situation because of your coach there. So maybe not quite the talent that Jacksonville has at this point. And then you look at a team, even like the Vikings, a ton of question marks at their quarterback position. Can Bridgewater come back and play? Is Bradford done at this point? Do you want to keep rolling out there with Case Keenum because he's winning? There's so many options out there. And now teams that all of a sudden may not have had that cap space are going to kind of be in play on this thing. So I just think that having that huge bankroll off of the table just helps a whole bunch of teams.
Yeah, and especially I think some teams might even have been scared off by the fact that Cousins and Kyle Shanahan have that previous relationship where they might say if he gets to choose, he's going to go to the system he already knows, right, which makes a lot of sense. But I thought this was I didn't comment before. I just want to say, I thought this was a brilliant move by the Niners because, one, obviously getting a guy who could be a franchise quarterback for a second-round pick is amazing, right, no matter who he is. You know what I mean? Who's only getting that in the second round? There's very few teams that have to do that. Number two, they're still getting a top 3 pick. So you can either use that on a skill guy for Jimmy, which you need, maybe a lineman to block for him, which you need,
right,
or you can get a crazy haul from someone who thinks they're Saquon Barkley away from the Super Bowl. So that's a thing. But I think maybe my favorite part is not only did you guarantee you got the guy, obviously, but you get to have this kind of trial period where wins and losses kind of don't matter.
Yep.
Because where are you going? Like, in essence, obviously, everybody in the Niners organization hopes they go 8-8. You know what I mean? And that's only because they've already lost 8 games. But if you're being a realist, like, how great is it going to be able to have this, hey, let's grow together, let's gel, and it's not August and a garbage preseason game. This is real football. We're going to get it down pat. Then we have the offseason to get used to each other even further. I think week 1 next year, you're hitting the ground running with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I thought it was a great trade because that kind of getting to know each other period is essentially an 8-game preseason for you, and then 4-game preseason next year. So there's really 12 games with Jimmy Garoppolo before this starts to matter.
Yeah, a lot of dominoes are going to fall from this trade specifically here coming up over the next couple months. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch and see how this unfolds. But I couldn't agree more. To take the chance, 2nd-round pick in a draft where you've already kind of, done a nice job of getting a lot of picks and having those assets to move. Now you could do that again if you want to. There are some talented, pieces on that 49ers team, but they're kind of in a position where they just need to take best players available and add to that. And now maybe you have your quarterback. So just very smart and well done on their part.
You don't have to Mitchell Trubisky it and force the quarterback at 2 next year.
Right.
You got it. Now let's get players.
All right. So another hard-hitting trade that came down early this morning, actually. Jay Ajayi, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. The best commentary that I heard on this all day was, on Twitter, somebody mentioned that, Adam Gase said the Dolphins had the worst offense in football. And then he punished his starting running back by trading him to the best team in football. So
sending messages, man.
He's got to send a message. So, the feeling here and what I heard from Howie Roseman was that LeGarrette Blount is still considered the starter. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Is that going to kind of transition, over the next couple of weeks as he really starts to learn this system? And do you buy into this idea that's out there that Ajayi's coming in to kind of, supplement the passing attack as a receiving back?
No. Listen, you don't make this trade. Like, listen, I'm going to let you guys get your points because this is your team. So I'm going to get mine now, and then I'm going to listen to you two talk and be ecstatic about this. All right. You don't trade for Jay Ajayi right now unless you plan on using him and you think that he's going to get you over a hump for a one-loss team at this point who wants to get home field advantage. You trade for Jay Ajayi. 1, the price was right. And 2, he is going to be an integral part of this team. You can tell me LeGarrette Blount's going to be the starter for now, but if you trusted LeGarrette Blount that much, why are you trading for a younger version of LeGarrette Blount? I understand Ajayi can give you a little bit more versatility in the pass game that Blount's going to give you, but in terms of rushing styles, I think they're very similar. So you could put on a good face, Howie Roseman, and tell me that Blount's still our starter and Ajayi's going to be the backup until Ajayi learns the playbook, and then by week 13 and 14, we're going to see a heavy dose of Jay Ajayi, and we're still going to see LeGarrette Blount in the 4th quarter running over tired defenders, which is what he does best. Let's not forget that. Okay, they're going to use LeGarrette the same way the Patriots use LeGarrette, for a couple of years there, where it's all right. We're going to give you a healthy dose of this guy or that guy and that guy, and in the 4th quarter, LeGarrette Blount's going to run you over because you have nothing left. And that's my argument for the Eagles. So now you guys go.
Well, honestly, I think you kind of nailed it. Like, I don't think Howie's full of it. I absolutely think Blount's the starter this week. And I'm not going to be surprised if he starts the rest of the season. As long as we all realize what starting means, it means you're out there for the first play on offense. Right. I think, what I mean? Like, it's different. I mean, if you're reading starter as, hey, this is David Johnson, Okay, no, he's not the starter. You know what I mean? But I think, you nailed that. The price is perfect. A fourth-round pick for a 24-year-old back who's still on his rookie salary for 2 more years is amazing. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was like third or fourth in the league in rushing last year. Now, yeah, we had our arguments about half of it coming in 3 games, yada yada. Fine.
Yep.
But the point is, it's there. So for me, the main crux of this trade is because I think the Eagles sense, as many teams do from year to year, we got to take it now. I mean, things don't break like this all the time. I don't think anybody thought this was a 7-1 roster coming into the season. And I'm still not entirely sure it's a 7-1 roster. Carson Wentz is playing like a 7-1 quarterback, and the defense is playing really well too. What's holding them back is kind of the rushing game. And it sounds dumb to say because they're 6th in the league in rushing. Well, a lot of that's because Carson Wentz is legit running the ball, and LeGarrette Blount, like you said, in the fourth quarter is punishing people. But what's hurting them is when Blount's in the game, they're running. When Smallwood's in the game, or maybe they're running, it's probably a pass play. They've become a little too predictable with these guys. And Ajayi gives you an opportunity to run right up the gut with him, stretch run with him, throw the ball to him on screens, and he's a decent pass protector. So when Jay Ajayi's in the game, you're not going to be able to know what Philly's doing. So it kind of gives defensive coordinators another problem. And the way the Eagles have been playing, I think the last thing defensive coordinators want is yet another problem to deal with as I'm trying to scheme for this team. You know what I mean? So you said ecstatic. I was when I read about it first because it's cool that you got the name guy. I'm not going to label myself as ecstatic now because of Jay Ajayi. What I'm ecstatic about is I know my team's trying to win the Super Bowl right now, right here, because there's no guarantee going forward. I think they recognize, listen, Zeke's gone. Aaron Rodgers is out. The Seahawks are giving up 38 points at home. Like, we got to try to do this thing now. And I think Ajayi helps you do that.
Look, just 2 things here from me on this, because I think you guys really hit the nail on the head for the most part, behind the reasons. I think that this current regime learned from the previous regime's mistakes. You got a franchise quarterback who was young, who was producing, who was, at that point where he could take that next step to being an elite quarterback. And they never really put anyone around him as far as weapons to make that happen. You know what I mean? They waited a little bit too long by the time they got T.O. there. And the magic was there at that point, but then that didn't work out. And they kind of just scrapped it and said, well, wow, we had an MVP caliber player when we had a stud on offense with him. Let's not do that again. So, you learn from your mistakes there. So it's very clear that they see in Carson Wentz that this is a special quarterback talent. Let's go after this and let's win right now while this window is wide open. I think we all would agree that there's nobody in the league that is dominant at this point. So it's wide open. My other point on this is that this is a guy who last year on a team that was not very good in the run blocking category ran for over 200 yards multiple times. Now, regardless of how you feel about the Eagles offensive line situation, and I know that as fans, like, we could be a little critical of Jason Kelce. There's question marks with Big V playing at left tackle right now. Is there any reason to not be super excited about that big game opportunities in Jay Ajayi behind this offensive line? Like, this could be a special unit when they're clicking on all cylinders. So now you have a very productive passing attack that teams have to account for. They can't just load the box up on you. Ajayi could be a receiving threat as well. So they don't just assume, as you mentioned with Blount, that when he's in the game, let's load the box up because they're probably running the ball. So you have that versatility now. So there's excitement there. This guy could have some really big games, really big, exciting chunk plays as well behind this offensive line. And I'm kind of excited to see it. All right, so talking more about these trades, one that came through a little bit later this afternoon, the Buffalo Bills acquired Kelvin Benjamin from the Carolina Panthers. Is there, first of all, before we get into like the impact of this move, how shocking is it that the Bills basically just purged this team of really any talent other than Tyrod Taylor and Shady McCoy and are being as productive as they have been to this point? I mean, they've really bought into what Sean McDermott is doing there. And now with Kelvin Benjamin, does this really do anything to kind of propel them into a playoff caliber team? Or are you not as excited about this move?
Go ahead, Miles. If you got something to say.
I love it for the Bills. I don't love it for fantasy at all. I mean, maybe it boosts Tyrod a little bit because it's a different weapon than they have. I think it's hilarious that they essentially looked like they were trying to tank, and now they're 5-2, and they're like, man, we better get somebody with some talent back on the roster. Yeah. I mean, and I say that as somebody who I don't really like Kelvin Benjamin all that much. I don't think he's that good. But I like it for them because of what I just said. It gives them something they didn't have. They're still going to be a running team. It's still going to be Tyrod and Shady. But when your kind of big play receiver's got to be Jordan Matthews, they drafted Zay Jones, and he hasn't done squat. He actually has the fewest catches of any player who's started at least 6 games this year. That's Zay Jones for you. And Charles Clay was making plays, but now he's kind of banged up, and he's probably still going to be out another week or two. I think Kelvin gives you that opportunity to, when teams are really starting to creep on Shady a little too much, we're over the top on Kelvin, and he's that big body guy that, he's a field stretcher for a different reason than Deshaun Jackson is. Throw it high, and he'll go get it. So, I really like it for Buffalo as a contender. Fantasy-wise, it does nothing to Benjamin's. Honestly, the only thing it does for Kelvin Benjamin for me is he's going to play 17 games this year instead of 16 because Carolina didn't have their bye yet, and Buffalo did already. So he's going to play 17 games. I'm still not sure he's a 1,000-yard receiver, even with the bonus game. But, he plays 17, and he's going to get 3 against the Patriots. So I guess that's good for fantasy purposes. But I don't know. I loved it for Buffalo. I thought it was a really weird trade for the Panthers. I guess they just weren't planning on – well, you saw a couple guys moved that are in their contract year, and it's probably a situation where, listen, we're not going to pay him. Let's get literally whatever we can for him. I guess. I don't know. I mean, but again, if you're Carolina, why are you moving a starting receiver? You're a contender in the NFC South.
Yeah, and it's more confusing to me in that element because this is a team that has been talking up and down about how they had to kind of take more off Cam Newton's plate because in the past they've asked him to just do way too much. And now you took, however we feel about him, one of their better threats at wide receiver away from him in a division that literally any one of those teams is capable of winning at this point. Mm-hmm. That's wide open. I mean, I know the Saints have looked good, but any one of those 4 teams at this point could win that division. And Carolina could easily have been one. So I don't know if this maybe is we realize Kelvin's not in our future plans, so let's just get something for him now and see what we've got in some of these young kids. Maybe it's making some kind of a statement or whatever. But that's the most curious thing to me. I mean, the Panthers are still in this.
Right.
I want to say this before I talk about Kelvin Benjamin. I want to say, we're seeing that philosophy has always been big in baseball and basketball of, okay, this guy's a free agent at the end of the year. Let's trade him and get something for him before he walks and we get nothing for him. And I think in football, that's never been a big thing because scheme is so much more important in those than go out and hit the ball and go out and catch the ball or go hit this jump shot or go make this block. You know what I mean? Right. It's more of a scheme situation in football than anything else. And sometimes guys just don't fit your scheme, so you don't just make these trades. And I think we're going to start seeing it more and more because, okay, so we can try and make him fit a scheme and, let's get something before he walks because we're going to lose out on these guys. And I think that's really important because I think we're going to start seeing this more and more in the future, to be honest with you. But the Benjamin thing, Buffalo realized they have a legitimate shot at the playoffs. He's nothing at this point. He's nothing more than just a red zone target. Now you have to be a little bit more honest with the Bills when they're inside the 20. Before you can kind of stack the box with Shady because you have nothing on the outside that even remotely looks like a big body red zone target. Now the threat is there at least. So you're more honest. Okay. The Panthers, this makes no sense. Absolutely zero sense. I don't care about getting something for him before he walks. you are already thin at wide receiver. You're not stacked at that position. You know what I mean? So unless you're going to tell me that you're going to go full steam ahead with Jay Stewart as your running back and McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel are going to start wide receiver, like what are you doing? You're giving up chances to have a playoff spot.
I think they probably just can't get enough Kalen Clay. I need me some Kalen Clay. No, I guess it's just I don't know. Maybe it's my own personal opinion. I don't think he was that good to begin with. So maybe Carolina's just saying, listen, he's clogging up what could help us get Curtis Samuel on the field. And while maybe Samuel's not a special player, but we did just take him in the second round. So it's almost like the Department of Redundancy department here with Funchess and Benjamin anyhow. So let's just have one of that player and try a guy with some speed on the other side, I guess. But
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think that, I like the Bills' chances. I mean, it's open. Their defense has played well. I think Tyrod continues to be underrated. This is going to be another interesting aspect to their offense now. So I'm interested to see how this works out for them. Even if it's just the threat of him being on the field, that should be an improvement at this point. So, I'm really excited to see how this works out. All right, let's talk real quick here. You guys are probably going to notice that, the Goons are all rocking the Gorb hoodies this week. All right. It's hoodie season. If that wasn't obvious by the chill in the air, it should be obvious by the fact that all three of us studs are currently wearing these fashionable, comfortable, and warm hoodies from our friends at Gorb. All right. You should check them out today at GHORBH.com. They've got all kinds of styles of sweatshirts, t-shirts, activewear for men, women, children. They've got you covered. Every color, all kinds of different designs. I got the two-tone look going. Miles and Rocco got the hockey style hoodie approach going with the more open neck there. No matter what you like, they've got something for you. It all feels good. It's all warm. It's all comfortable. And you could be constantly reminded about the mission statement behind Gorb. And that's to get hungry or be hungry. And we've decided that we are going to get hungry this football season. We are rocking it. It is the movement that is taking over social media. Check it out today, GHORBH.com. And it's all over Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search the hashtag GHORBH to find out more.
My favorite part, I love the whole message, and the sweatshirt's awesome. My favorite part is just our view of you tonight. Your shirt just says "Get hungry."
That's right.
Which I'm always on board for getting hungry. So,
hey, got to get hungry, especially when you're eating your kids' Halloween candy.
There you go.
All right. Hey, we're going to fire through this quickly here. We took a lot of time to cover what happened at the trade deadline because we feel like it's really important.
It was a big day.
It was a huge day. So I don't think that, we wanted to gloss over any of that. And we're certainly not trying to gloss over any of the fantasy lineup stuff for this week, but we want to fit this in there as well. So we're going to go a little bit quicker than we might with our Goons and Ghosts this week. Just as a reminder, our Goons are the guys that we believe are ranked a little bit lower than they should be and are going to overperform that ranking. Our Ghosts are guys who are ranked fairly high, and we don't believe are going to live up or play up to that ranking. So let's jump right into it. Miles, give us your Goon for Week 9.
My Goon, I'm going with Jacoby Brissett, quarterback from the Colts. He enters Week 9 as QB 18 pre-rank, and as we discussed, that's out of only 26 quarterbacks. We're kind of on a weak here. So he's finished actually top 9 this season more often than he's finished at 18 or worse in fantasy. And the only teams that have held him out of the top 15 were in Seattle and in Jacksonville, which are arguably two of the best secondaries in the entire league. This week he goes up against the Texans, who have given up the third most points to quarterbacks this season, and they're fresh off of a 452-yard, 4-touchdown performance to Russell Wilson. Now, obviously, listen, Brissett isn't on Russ's level. I just love the matchup here, especially when you consider how much success T.Y. Hilton has had in his career against Houston. I won't go into that, but trust me, it's good. I love Brissett to finish really well this week, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, adding 40 and a rushing score this week on the ground. He's going to have a top 10 finish at the quarterback position, but possibly more importantly, he is easily going to be the number 1 bye-week fill-in for those of you who are in some depth trouble. Pick up Jacoby.
There, you heard it there. Rock, give us your goon for week 9.
My goon for week 9 is running back Adrian Peterson from the Arizona Cardinals. I know that's still weird to say, but coming in this week at running back 12, my biggest thing here, the Cardinals give him the ball 24 times 2 weeks ago, they win. They give him the ball 11 times, they lose. They know where their bread and butter is at this point. They're going to give Adrian Peterson high volume, and to boot, they're playing the 29th ranked rush defense of the San Francisco 49ers. Cardinals are not completely out of the playoff hunt yet. They still have an outside chance. They know their best way to do it is Adrian Peterson. They're going to ride that train. I like him way better than RB12. I like him 120 total yards and a score.
All right, and my goon for week 9 is Devontae Adams of the Green Bay Packers. How an injury changes things here. He is ranked wide receiver number 31 heading into this week. That's criminally undervalued. I mean, I understand that Brett Hundley, there's some issues there, but when he came into the game late against the Vikings, he targeted Devontae Adams. The game script kind of got out of hand with New Orleans, where it was more of a running game for both sides. The Lions have given up an average of a receiving touchdown to the number 1 receiver or the highest producing receiver in an offense each game this year. With exception of week 2 performance against the Giants, the Lions give up an average of 38 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver units. In 6 career games versus the Lions, Adams only has 3 touchdowns. That's a 50% rate. All 3 of them have come in his last 3 contests against the Lions. So it's a recency situation there. Brett Hundley has had the bye to iron things out, kind of get revamped here, get his game up to speed. I believe that's going to help a lot. He's got a really good coach to help him along in that process. I think Adams is the clear number 1 option as far as talent is concerned with the Packers. I like him for 7 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown. Clearly not wide receiver 31. All right, let's talk about our goons now. Rocco, you're going to lead us off with your goon for week 9.
Those were our goons. Now we're going to do ghosts.
Our ghosts, sorry.
Sorry, bud. Didn't mean to throw you on the bus.
I'm a little ahead of myself.
That's fine. My ghost for this week is running back Mark Ingram of the New Orleans Saints. One, he comes in at running back 5. Listen, he's on a tear right now. I understand that. They're giving him lots of carries, and they're winning, and that's fine. But it wouldn't be the Sean Payton if he didn't do Sean Payton things. I look for this week for them to kind of lean on Breeze a little bit more heavily. The Buccaneers have the 10th ranked rush defense. I think it could be more of a shootout type game. I like Jameis to do a lot for the Bucs and try and get them back on track. So I look for this to be a high scoring affair, a little less Mark Ingram, a little bit more Alvin Kamara and Drew Brees. That's basically my biggest issue here is coming in at running back 5. I don't think you're going to get running back 5 production. I think he's going to take a hit. So Mark Ingram, my ghost of the week.
All right, my ghost this week is Chris Thompson of the Washington Redskins. He's running back 12 this week going up against the Seahawks. Teams are only averaging 4 catches per game out of the backfield against the Seahawks this season. They've given up the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to running backs overall to this point. They've only given up 1 receiving touchdown on a really broken down play to opposing running backs. So the wet conditions and the lack of, downfield throws last week contributed to his inflated numbers and probably his inflated ranking going into this week where he had that, insane stat line with all the catches last week. He's averaging just 5 targets per game and just 6 carries per game. So he's been really inconsistent in the amount of touches that he's gotten. Got a tough matchup after a very tough division loss that likely keeps them out of the playoffs at this point. Travel all the way across the country to a tough place to play, even though it's not quite what it once was. I think he's only going to have 3 carries, 13 yards, 3 catches for 26 yards and no touchdowns this week. I think Chris Thompson is a non-factor this week based on how the Seahawks play their defense against these receiving type backs. He is my ghost for this week. Miles, who do you got for us?
Man, I thought I was going to crush a guy. I mean, Chris Thompson might as well not even go.
No, don't even get on the plane.
I'm going with DeMarco Murray. We're going to keep it in the running back family here out of Tennessee. Demo is currently pre-ranked running back 9, going up against a Ravens defense ranked 20th against fantasy running backs. So somewhat friendly until you really look a little more closely and realize, A, they were destroyed by Le'Veon Bell. B, they gave a ton of yards up to Jordan Howard. And then they actually just let up 2 big runs to Latavius Murray to let him to a solid finish. But outside of those 3, no running back has gotten over 75 yards against them. Only Fournette and Lynch have scored. So better than the numbers are going to tell you. And DeMarco Murray of 2017 is not in the same class as Lev Bell, Jordan Howard, Leonard Fournette, or even Marshawn Lynch, surprisingly enough. He's struggled. He has not rushed for over 60 yards since week 3. He only has 2 double-digit points in half PPR to his name this season. That's not great for those of you scoring at home. I hesitate to say he's going to disappoint you this week because, honestly, he is going to give you what you should expect at this point. He's going to meet expectations of mine, just not of the industry at RB9. I'm giving him 47 yards on the ground, 1 catch for 7 yards through the air, no touchdowns. Usually my ghost is temper expectations. This week, get him out of your lineup. You can't start DeMarco Murray this week.
All right, it's time to talk about our daily fantasy football best values. What we're going to do here typically is try and give you a guy who's going to cost you a lot less than the average player at that position, but it's going to give you a bigger return than you expect so that you can use that money in an area to get a more expensive stud type player or a higher paying quarterback or whatever. It just frees up some of that cash for you. And these guys are usually the kind of people that you want to target in tournament plays as well. I'm going to start it off here, and I'm going with Ted Ginn Jr. for $5,700 this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs could not stop me right now in the passing game. And I don't know how many of you guys know this, but I'm kind of a legend in the Turkey Bowl every year for making ridiculous one-handed catches and finding ways to score, whether it's pick sixes, whatever. So the Bucs definitely could not stop me right now. They are not going to stop the deep play ability of Ted Ginn. They've given up 41.3 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver groups. That's a lot. 8 touchdowns surrendered in 7 games this year. That's not good either. They get beat deep at an alarming rate this season. They're giving up 13 yards per catch this season to slot and deep threat type receivers. The big play probability is high for a low costing player this week. Breeze likes to chuck it up there for him. I think that this could be a big return for a small investment, the kind of thing that you're looking for in daily values here. I got 3 catches, but for 87 yards and a touchdown for a decent sized return on your $5,700. Miles, who do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. That the good news is that you can too. All right, today's FanDuel, DraftKings set their prices generally on Monday, and today's draft trade deadline work left some major value out there for you to take advantage of. With Jay Ajayi being moved to the Eagles, the Dolphins' backfield is being left completely to Damian Williams and my value of the week, which is Kenyon Drake. They both cost the FanDuel minimum of $4,500. Personally, I prefer Drake to take over that early down work. Honestly, probably close to Jay Ajayi's workload because I think Kenyon Drake's a pretty good player personally. These guys are hosting the Raiders on Sunday night this week. The Raiders are 22nd in running back scoring. I like the Finns to lean on the run game to minimize the damage of returning to the Jay Cutler era. And yes, I said that right. The returning to the Jay Cutler era is killing the Dolphins. But you minimize that if you keep it on the ground. So I like Drake to take the lion's share of this. I could be wrong here. All I want you to do is take one of your running back slots and stick the Dolphins running back you prefer in it. You've got a minimum price to a guy who's going to carry a major workload. You got to take advantage of that when you can. Personally, I'm looking for Drake to finish at 90 total yards and a touchdown. That is gigantic value for those of you who are willing to take the plunge here.
All right, Rocco, round us out for week 9.
I am going the lowest I've ever gone on this setting. $4,500, the lowest you can spend on a player. I like Philadelphia Eagle wide receiver Mac Hollins. Here's the deal. Started off really slow, special teams player. You guys know him. 3 catches total through the first 5 weeks of the season. But then the last 3 weeks, he's developing a little chemistry with Carson. He's pushing other guys off the field, getting more snaps, becoming more relevant. Two targets, 2 catches 3 weeks ago. A big 64-yard touchdown the next week. 2 more catches the following week. He's showing Carson Wentz that he can be trusted. He's becoming the deep threat that I think Torrey Smith was hoped to be. And I think that's going to wind up being Mac Hollins' role at this point. I like him to get in the end zone this week on a deep ball. And for $4,500, that's more than you can ask for. Okay, so Mac Hollins, $4,500, Eagles wide receiver, my daily play of the week.
All right, well, that's it for this week 9 edition of the show. Hopefully you guys are in a good place heading into week 9 as far as fantasy playoffs are concerned. This is the time of the year to really be moving and shaking and getting in position to get a good seed in the playoffs. And hopefully, we covered everything extensively on what happened in the trade deadline today, especially with a fantasy and a little bit of actual football insight for you guys. So, we kind of pride ourselves on giving you multiple different looks from multiple different perspectives rather than, just maybe a one talking head approach. Yeah, I mean, I said it, one talking head approach. So be sure to stay tuned to footballgoons.com for all of our updates each and every week. Miles has this week's power rankings already up there, so you're going to want to check those out. Always great insight, always entertaining write-ups for each and every team in the power rankings. It's the only place to get them at footballgoons.com. You can check us out on social media too. We are on facebook.com/footballgoons. On the Twitter, we are at footballgoons. And right here on our YouTube channel, where you can subscribe and comment to our videos, and we'll give you feedback pretty much as soon as we can on those comments. We always like to talk back and forth with our crew because you guys are loyal listeners, and we appreciate that at all times. You could send us your lineup questions, your comments, your concerns, your favorite type of Halloween candy, your least favorite type of Halloween candy. We want to talk to you guys about anything that you want to debate. That's what we do well. We'll catch you guys next time.